Hi, and as we get ready to be able to pre-order Indomitus, the 40k 9th edition box this coming Saturday, I was looking ahead at sort of more of the rules that are coming out. Now, the core rules are now available to download as a PDF on their website. We sort of knew what these largely were anyway from snippets, from reading the various articles, listening to what playtesters were recently allowed to say about the game. And it's all sounded very positive from my point of view as a returning player. So I used to play Warhammer Fantasy and 40k many years ago, stopped for a good long time to play other games, came back to Warhammer a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago now, and for Age of Sigmar. And it was quite interesting because when I came back, it was just as second edition Age of Sigmar were coming out, which was really good. Second edition, I mean, first edition or nightmare. And it's almost like history is repeating. So I wanted also to get back into 40k, and I did the Age of Sigmar first because I'm not going to be able to cope with both at the same time for various reasons, which I'll come to. And now, you know, that I'm getting back into 40k, it's quite bizarre that we've now got the new edition coming out. So it's like, okay, I was learning all that 8th edition in the bin. Not completely in the bin, of course. It's not completely changed it. But learning the 9th edition before I will start playing that. I've been getting some armies ready, sort of, tentatively. And then there comes the rub. Now, the rules all sound very interesting. And a lot of people who play the game a lot are saying that it's much better than 8th edition. And I am very prepared to believe it. It looks like there's quite a few intricacies in there that are going to have a lot of people playing the game wrong for a while by the looks of it. But it does look better. Even though I thought 8th edition was sort of all right. Army balance, but army balance is always going to be an issue. That's still going to be, don't imagine that's going to go away in 9th edition. But if there's one rule that is causing a bit of controversy, it is the rule about 10 victory points if your matched play army is fully painted, based, all the rest of it. Now, to me, it's not so much a contentious rule as utterly pointless, I have to say. Because you imagine the different scenarios. Imagine the scenarios in which you are playing matched play 40k. So at the top of the tree, of course, are tournaments. In tournaments, you play with painted armies anyway. Of course, a tournament organiser can have whatever rules they like. But if you go into any sort of respectable tournament, there isn't just points for a fully painted army. It's a requirement. It used to be the case. I remember when I used to go to tournaments for Fantasy Battle many years ago, and there were points then for it being properly painted and based, textured, and all the rest of it. And you know, that was fine. Now it's the case that they are going to be painted, and if they're not painted, you'll remove. If there's a model that's not painted, or if it doesn't meet this minimum requirement, the tabletop standard, you are removing it. You're not using it in the game. So the rule is obviously pointless from a tournament point of view because it's just a base requirement. So then you're talking about friendly games in your local club. And it might well be a campaign, it might be a local tournament or something like that, but it's still friendly. It's not, actual tournament standard. Now, in a scenario like that, first of all, you think, what is its purpose? So its purpose is, so obviously it feels much nicer to play with and against painted armies. Of course it is. But also, the majority of people, I think I'm on one extreme. I don't think most people are as bad as me. I like a lot of armies, and I really like playing the game. I don't like assembly models, and I don't like painting models, so I do that quite slowly. In fact, I've commissioned a few armies because I'm just never going to get on top of it. And so when I first came back to Warhammer, and it was for Age of Sigmar first of all, I found a local gaming club in Scunthorpe, but I joined the Facebook page, but I didn't go there for a couple of months because I thought to myself, well, I want to have a game, and I've been in clubs before, and it's always sort of frowned upon really to be using armies that aren't painted or properly assembled because it's not good. So I thought, well, I need to paint an army first. So I ended up painting a Night Haunt army, specifically because even I could paint those very quickly and easily. So a couple of months I had 2,000 points. Then I went to the gaming club and found that there weren't actually that many Age of Sigmar players, and it was a very long time before I got a 2,000 point game. It was really messing about with 1,000, so I could have gone there much earlier. And also, it was absolutely not the case that people would be using fully painted armies. But I was being good, so I'd painted my Night Haunt, and I used my Night Haunt while I then worked on my Nurgle army, and I didn't use my Nurgle army until those models were painted. So I was doing well. I was doing it right. Then, of course, I just started getting models and more models and more models, even though I said I'm just going to focus on one army at a time. That went out the window. Now I've got boxes and boxes and boxes of models. So, and I keep changing between them because I like all the armies. So I play most of my games, truth be told, that are not all painted. They're assembled. No, they're not all painted. In fact, sometimes even the assembly's been a bit dodgy, but they usually are assembled, just not always painted. Now, if there was a rule that basically said you are going to lose this game, and I know 10 victory points with the new 9th edition doesn't guarantee you lose the game, but it's a hefty disadvantage. So if you're going to go into a game and it's basically you have got a mountain to climb to win this game, I just wouldn't play that game. It's that simple. I would only just stick to my painted armies, which means, and that would mean I just wouldn't play a game for some time. If I had to paint the armies up, I would just go, okay. And there's another thing as well. So some people may be thinking, well, it's good, and I get it's crap for people who do paint their armies really well, particularly if they focus on one army, it's easy for them to do that, or just they enjoy the painting and they put their nicely painted army down and they come across something like grey plastic or worse, light grey resin. And yeah, it's a bit crap. I get that. But is it really going to encourage anything different? Because you've got the first level where someone actually doesn't have their army ready. Are you going to say to a new player that you cannot play this game until you've got everything fully painted? Are you trying to turn people off the hobby? So of course you're not going to do that. Nor are you going to come out with I'm going to start with a 10 victory point head start. Because again, not really in the interest of fair play. So that's not going to happen. Secondly, if it encourages people to paint, which is presumably the reason for it, what is it actually going to encourage them to do? Paint it well? No, it's not. It's going to encourage them to do the bare minimum to get it to tabletop standard, which will not be that great quality. I mean, if I needed to paint models and I was desperate to play a game with a particular army and I couldn't play it without having them painted to the tabletop standard, my standards are not high as it is. Those standards would be lowered significantly in the interests of haste. So it has that aspect as well. So the reality is I look at this and I think, it's not even worth arguing over because it is a pointless rule. For tournaments, it's an irrelevant rule because you must take properly painted armies, tabletop standard minimum. For a local club, if you insist on using this rule, and of course it's effective, it's effectively a house rule. Because what I imagine clubs would do is just to state where they stand on it. In reality, probably leaving it to individual people organising games between themselves. And, it will be a literal case of if two people have their fully painted armies, they'll both say, yeah, I'm fine with that. And then they both start off with 10 victory points. It's meaningless. If one person meets the requirements and the other person doesn't, then that's like saying, well, I'm going to have a 10 victory point head start. That might make the other person less inclined to play them. And so you just wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it. So it has no relevance. The only time I can see this rule, ironically, ever being a thing, ever having any impact at all. Now, I've moved around a little bit, so I've been members of different gaming clubs in my time. Not loads and loads, but a few different ones. And one thing that is notable is in every gaming club, you will always get the odd man-child, won't you? We know they're always there. The people who will make a big issue of it. and will get stroppy. And if they have if they don't have a nicely painted army, then they won't cause any trouble on it. But if they do, they will, because they will. These are the people who don't just want to play the game. I mean, obviously you should try and win, but the winning is everything. And they will complain. These are the people who complain at their dice rolls if they don't. Never their tactical ineptitude or your tactical superiority, as the case may be. And they will actively seek out people who won't meet the requirements to have a game with them to get the 10 victory point head start. And they will feel aggrieved when someone says, well, I don't think it's very sensible to have a 10 victory point head start. I'll just play someone else who either doesn't have a painted army either, or I'll play someone who doesn't really care about that rule and won't use it. And then they'll get pissed off. And that's all I see that this rule has the capacity to do. But those are my thoughts on it, because it is, encouragingly, I suppose, the only contentious rule that I've really seen. And it is a rule that everyone's falling over themselves to explain you don't have to use, which basically means it's a house rule, in which case, why is it even in there? Why would Games Workshop even mention it? I really don't know. But those are my thoughts anyway. Next week we're pre-ordering Indomitus, of course. And then 2 weeks after that, go hands on the box. Which will be very exciting, particularly as, it does contain some Necrons. And although, I am excited for that, because Necrons is going to be one of my main armies. There's, like I always am, even with 40k returning to that, I'm doing a lot of different armies, but Death Guard and Necrons were in the past my favourites. I'm not going to say they definitely will be going forward, but they are the two I'm starting with. There's always going to be Harlequins as well on the way. But I do have to get them painted. But not to brilliant standard. The other good thing about Necrons, of course, it's quite easy to paint them, because this thing is going to be dry brushed with different metal colours. There'll be 3 different colours on it, and actually there will be more than 3 different colours on this one, but not many more. But there it is anyway. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, and until next time, I will see you later.